Okay. Wow. Hi, everyone. Great. So, welcome to Not Everyone's a Critic, the role of reviewers and journalists in tabletop RPGs. I'm Sebastian Yue. I'm going to be the moderator for this panel, and I'm a full-time game designer, writer, editor, and former journalist. I'm going to get everybody to introduce themselves. So, Thomas, why don't you go first?
Yeah, hi, I'm Thomas Manuel, he, him. I'm also a former journalist, former lots of things. Specifically now, I write the Indie RPG newsletter, which has been going on for about 3 years and is inching towards 6,000 subscribers. I also I took over last year the Yes Indeed podcast, which is an interview podcast talking to RPG designers. Yeah. And I'm also specifically a fan of everybody on this panel, if that's a qualification. Right? Sam, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sam Lee. Pronouns are she, they. I'm the owner of Blinking Birch Games and the designer of the game Anamnesis, which actually Thomas worked on. I do game design and editing, but kind of more related to this panel, I make short form videos about indie TTRPGs, mostly on TikTok, but also YouTube and Twitter.
Hi, I'm Linda, or Lynn Kadega. I am a journalist and I write for Rascal News, where I'm a co-founder and writer.
Yeah. Sweet. So I'm going to get right into it. I know that many of us are game designers and creators in the space in our own right, but we all do vastly different media work. So I'm interested in how everybody would define their role in the tabletop space. So we can go reverse order. Lynn, what do you think?
Oh, goodness. I see myself as, a journalist and as a member of the Fourth Estate with regards to this industry. Kind of in a way, half in and half out in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I kind of see myself as more of a promoter in the space. I think I'm the only person on this panel who is not a current or former journalist. I mostly try to focus on spreading word about indie games and getting new people interested in them.
Yeah. Neither Sam nor Lynn said that, but they're also game designers. Both of them have made games. I also have made games and do make games. I am a game designer who participates in the space in that way. But I'm probably known for the newsletter, which is I think can be confused for journalism, but as a journalist, I don't claim that. I don't describe it as journalism. It is a personal newsletter written by someone to kind of curate and discuss what's happening in the indie RPG space, because other people are not as online as I am. That's about it.
Yeah. I mean, being online is a great thing. It's where you find out stuff. I mean, everyone needs online. Yeah.
I'm online, so you don't have to.
That is a great tagline. I'm online, so you don't have to be. Yeah, incredible. Yeah. So I did notice that nobody identified themselves specifically as a critic. So Sam, do you want to speak first to that?
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating question for this particular panel. We were kind of talking about it before the stream. I do not consider myself a critic. I've talked to a few people about this, and I think like everybody has like a slightly different definition of what a critic is in the RPG space. And some people consider me a critic because ultimately I choose which games I feature in videos, but I don't consider myself to be one because I don't talk about videos from a more like critique lens. I typically just focus on what I like about the games that I'm talking about. And I don't know that I've ever said anything negative about an indie game on my videos. So for that reason, I don't really consider myself a critic.
Yeah. Thomas, what do you think?
I do identify as a critic. I do think of myself as a critic, even though I maybe in objective terms have not written that much criticism. But I think the goal of my work, the direction I'm pointing at, is very much trying to do a certain kind of criticism that the space doesn't really have a lot of. And it is tough being a critic, and that's why I'm in no rush to make a lot. I mean, I don't know who said it, but to be a good critic is easy. You just have to know everything. I think that might be like Barbara Ehrenreich, but I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah. So it is. So I create my criticism at a slow pace, but that is definitely how I think of myself.
Yeah. Lynn.
Yeah, I'm a hater. No, I'm a critic. I think that comes part and parcel with being a journalist in the space and working on an outlet that tries to take a holistic view of tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, it's such an interesting question to consider, but I did notice that like we will have a degree of curation happening. So with journalism, you still promotion and curation, like you do need to be selective about what you cover, what makes it to your platform. I'm interested to hear from everybody what like how you would select things to cover, how you select games, people, issues. Yeah, like how do you make that, like how does that decision making process like look for you? Lynn, I'll ask you.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question because you're basically asking me, how do you find what's newsworthy?
Yeah.
And for me, something is newsworthy when it's out of the ordinary. And that's quite often, you can find something out of the ordinary in any game, and it's a lot of judgment on how much priority you can, how much energy you can shift around at any given time. But yeah, the idea of like what is and isn't newsworthy is like a really hard one to determine because it's something that every person has different ideas of like what is out of the ordinary, because we're all informed and influenced by our own like objective biases or subjective biases. So yeah, it's hard. For me, I think something's newsworthy when I sit up and I think like I've never seen this before. This is like a really interesting perspective, or like it's making me think in new ways about games. And it's it's hard. It's a hard thing to do, especially because like for the next couple of months, I'm really dedicating myself to Rascal full time. So figuring out what's newsworthy is a big deal. And it's, luckily we have 3 of us who can like dive into a Discord and just be like, is this anything? Is this anything? And people can be like, no, Linda, no, it's fucking not. Or they can be like, what, like, you're going to have to like pull out the murder board for this one because it might be. But so, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's vibes a lot of the times. I hate to say it, vibes. And I think lastly, it's like analyzing what we've already put on the site and seeing where our coverage is lacking and improving in those spaces.
Yeah. Thomas, what does your decision-making process look like when you're curating your newsletter?
So curating the newsletter is pretty straightforward. I try to include anything that I think might be interesting to my audience, and that is very, very wide. But the bar for entry is pretty low. But even then, that there is some amount of like discernment there. In terms of what I write about is much more personal and specific, which is that I try to like over the last 3 years, the big journey I've been going on is like developing a taste and understanding what I like about games. When I say I like a game, what am I saying? Like, what part of it do I like? And being able to try to communicate that. So I almost always am only writing about games that I have played and games that I have a relationship with. And I'm trying to communicate that kind of personal experience with that. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Sam, what about you?
So I typically, because it's a lot of kind of promotional work that I do, I really try to focus on different games that I'm not seeing a lot of people talking about. So even within kind of the the sphere of like indie games. So it's pretty rare that I talk about a game that's as known as like Heart or Lancer or Wander Home. I've talked about like Recipe on Communish Paper, Cyber Castle, Digital Dracula. So like games that a lot of people don't talk about super often. And so usually if so when somebody reaches out to me about a game and I'm like, I've never heard of this game, that actually strikes my interest even more than games that I have previously heard about. And then I also do sometimes talk about different crowdfunding campaigns going on. But I've gotten more selective about those over time. I typically try to focus on ones that either are having trouble funding, that like aren't hitting their funding goal, or ones that actually aren't on Kickstarter, because I care a lot about like diversifying our crowdfunding sources. And so if something is on BackerKit or Crowdfunder, or any of these other ones, then that I'm more likely to talk about those than I am a Kickstarter project. So yeah, and I try to have most of my videos, most of the games that I'm talking about being by designers from marginalized groups. Not all of them, but that's kind of a goal with the channel as well.
Yeah. So I know that like you do your excellent short form videos, flipping through indie games, as you said, and crowdfunding campaigns. But I was interested to see what everybody overall thinks about themselves in terms of promotion, because I know that can be like, depending on how you identify yourself, like journalism and promotion, a lot of people think that there might be some kind of friction between those areas. So I'm interested to hear, like Thomas, what you think about that too.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into a platform on which other people might be interested in promoting themselves. That was never my sort of like goal in doing it. But once that happened, it became something like that I had to take seriously. So I sell ads on my newsletter. Like this is something that people can just, if they want a link to their game on my newsletter, they can just buy an ad, and I'm completely like okay with that. Like I control what the ad looks like. It's text, whatever, it's 30 words, like all of that stuff. But otherwise, the newsletter is kind of unspoken me promoting in some sense whatever I find sort of interesting, and like almost all the criteria that Sam said also applies to me, right? Like I am trying to point people at things that I don't think they might have missed. I am trying to point people at the work of creators from the Global South. All of that stuff is happening, but it's not something that I kind of like advertise. And people do occasionally write to me and send me press kits and try to have me write about their game, and like almost all 99% of times that's not something I can do, because again I have this the newsletter is a personal platform. It's a space for me to write about games that I have played with mostly. But now there's a really easy way to do it, which is that you publish an announcement on Rascal News and send me a link to that, and I might put that in the newsletter. Like that's a real thing. That's a great thing. I think Lynn and Rascal have made a cool thing there. So yeah.
People have really done that, because I read the Yes Indeed newsletter.
Okay. No, I mean, I follow the announcements page on Rascal so that I can find stuff. So like, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like this is kind of like, if you sent me a press kit, that's less useful because I have to find, now you want me to do some work to make this public facing. But if they have written an announcement on Rascal, I can link to that if it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Lynn, how about you?
Oh gosh. I think that in a lot of ways, access is promotion. So again, for example, like in a couple weeks or next week, next week I am attending D&D briefing about like Eye of Vecna, right? Mm-hmm. And it's expected that I'm going to be writing about it, but I'm attending like this exclusive press briefing, which I mean, like all the press is attending. And that's a form of promotion where it's like you are given access to this information, like you're going to write about it, right? You're going to promote us, right? And I'm like, maybe. Yeah. Who's to say? what am I going to do? But yeah, access is promotion in a lot of ways. I think that access and promotion are also like tied to newsworthiness, because often, authors will go on like little speaking tours, right? Like I spoke to David Ewalt, whose book is coming out, or whose book just came out, and I got access as part of like his promotional campaign. And I'm like, all right, like scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's that kind of like balance that you have to go through. I got another arc right next to me that I was like reading excerpts of to the group before we went on camera. And I'm going to write about that. I'm going to like pull an excerpt and publish it on the site. So there is like some part of journalism that is promotion, but it's definitely keeping it at an arm's length, and sort of understanding that that's not the goal of journalism, and understanding that like that kind of promotion can only occur when it is like genuinely newsworthy on its own merits, rather than just newsworthy like because it's new or promotional, or something's like just dropped in. That's not very elegant, in like I didn't say that very elegantly, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I like that about access is promotion. I haven't really thought about it that way before. It's very true though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was going to ask Sam whether you always thought about yourself as a promoter going into this work.
Yeah. If I always thought of myself as one, is that what
Yeah.
Kind of, actually. I mean, from when I started making videos, the original goal of that was promotion. Kind of not necessarily though a little bit for individual games and designers, but I kind of thought of it more as like as a whole, for kind of the indie space of RPGs, because there's a lot of people who don't know that these games are out there. And so my goal was just to get more people aware that these types of games exist. So that was kind of my original goal going into it. And then when I started getting more of an audience, I started thinking a little bit more critically about like which games specifically, which designer specifically, how is I going to kind of try to balance this? And so it's kind of, I guess in terms of promotion, it's less broad. I mean, it still is broad. That's still my ultimate goal, is just get more people interested in these games. But there are other considerations and places where that narrows too. So I think overall it hasn't changed a ton, other than that. Yeah, and it's interesting in terms of like promotion and critique too, because the way that I like to promote work is by talking positively about it. I kind of view it as like a hey, check this out, like an invitation to be like, this is something that's really exciting, and I want to like show this to you. But I think that like promotion through journalism and through critique also, I mean, happens all the time. You can give like a pretty like solid critique about the goods and the bads of a game, and like that can help promote the game, and people, the right people who really want to play that game and don't really care about the specific critiques are going to find it that way. So I think it's interesting how different people approach that.
I do want to mention that like when I interviewed Quinn's, who's doing Quinn's Quest, which is like tabletop role-playing game reviews, he said that he was planning to do both like negative and positive reviews of games. And his take is very similar to yours, where he said like it doesn't matter how harsh or how friendly, like how kind I am to a game. If I review it correctly, there will always be like one person who is like, that rips and I need it right now. And there are always going to be someone, even if it's like the most positive glowing review, who will be like, that's not for me.
I was actually just thinking about that while I was talking, because I caught up to, I was a couple videos behind on Quinn's Quest, and I caught up yesterday. And so I watched his Lancer video, which is, it's a fantastic video. I highly recommend people watch it. It's a really, I think, great example of critique in the tabletop space. And he really raves about certain parts of Lancer, and he really criticizes other parts of Lancer. But it was definitely a video where, like, even when watching it, I was like, that might not be the game for me, but I already knew that it wasn't the game for me based on what I already knew about Lancer. But like for other people who love that tactics stuff in their games, they're going to see that and they're going to be like, yes, please. This is perfect. So it really does, I think, help people narrow in on like what they really do enjoy. And you know, it'll always attract somebody.
So I also have this weird relationship to positive reviewing, which is that I will almost only write positively about a game, but that is because when I talk about my personal experience with something, like I think it's very easy to play a game and to be like, oh, it didn't work for me. Paul Sega has this really nice kind of Twitter thread about it from years ago. But basically, for most people, the action of playing a game is involves so many different variables and so many things that it's not a surprise if you had this huge amount of like hype or potential or just this kind of expectation from a game, then you play it and it's not that, and you just say, oh, this game didn't meet my expectations. I think that's a trap I don't want to fall into. So the thing I want to articulate is, what did I like about this game? What is it doing that's interesting? And I'm again sort of like what Quinn's does. It just happens. It happens without you trying to do it, where people read it and go like, that's for me or that's not for me. But like that's not the goal. I'm trying to articulate like what about this is special or interesting or worth engaging.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that makes a lot of sense. And like, I think it's a really good point that you brought up, that it's a question of how you can nail down like why your experience was the way it was, and how you can articulate that to people who are looking for new games, or might not even necessarily know what games they like or how to define that. But if they read something and they see like, hey, this person had this experience, then like they'll be like, oh, you know what, if I had that experience, I would probably feel this kind of way. It's really easy to imagine an experience with the game, and then that can inspire you to check it out or not. And I think there is a lot of value actually also in seeing that being able to identify whether a game is and is not for you. It's not necessarily a bad or good thing. It's just not every game is going to be everything for everyone, and that's kind of how it should be, right? Yeah.
Also, like being able to identify exactly like why you felt a certain way about a game, and like trying to say like, hey, this is the experience I had, but then like really like examining both from like a mechanical aspect and like a social gameplay, people around the table aspect, right? And being able to like look at that and be like, this is actually why it didn't hit for me, or this is like the reason why it was great, is like such a huge skill to have. And it's like always, I think, excited to talk about and read about. So I think that's an awesome way to approach things.
I think it's also really, really important to have that skill, especially when you are engaging in critique, and especially when you're engaging in critique with games, which are such like an interactive medium, where I think that I'm not unique in this. I can make any game fun. And I think people who play games as often as we do, even if we're like sitting there with a system that's like maybe not for us, or a game that's like not totally to our taste, like we're like, okay, I could still have fun here. And sort of being able to divide that fun that you have at the table versus like how you actually feel about that game, and how that game fundamentally wants to work versus the way that it worked at your table is, it's hard to tear that apart and be more objective than you are when you're actually like playing the game. Because I think that's something that a lot of people say is like, well, I had fun. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Like, fun doesn't I'm sorry, that doesn't fucking matter. Like, tell me like what about the game was actually like good for you. And if you say like, I was having fun with my friends, I'm like, all right, we're done here. Like, okay, good for you, I guess. What does that tell me about the game?
Yeah. I know that we're all very busy people, and that we don't necessarily have time to sit down and play every single game that's going to necessarily cross your desk. And I think that this is an issue that people have touched on in various areas of the larger tabletop sphere. But I also wanted to get everybody's take on like being a critic and thinking about games and reading them versus actually being able to play them. So it's a kind of big, juicy question. Sam, what do you think about it?
I will straight up say that most of the games that I talk about, I have not played. Because I don't have the time to. But I would love to be able to. And I do think that it means that there are certain things that I can't offer. You know, when I read a game, there's stuff I can talk about like the rules that I really like in theory, the rules that I think will work really well in a game. I can talk about like the way it's written, the layout, the world building behind it. But when I am promoting it, I can't say like, hey, I played it and like this particular thing worked so well or was so unique. And that's one of the reasons why I don't offer a lot of critique for games, because I think that with that said, absolutely think that you can critique a game without playing it. And there's multiple reasons for that. I think it's good to like be clear about whether or not you have played a game if you're offering like critical critique. But I think that also people who do read a lot of games and play a lot of games, you never know exactly how it's going to play out at the table. But the more that you design games and read them and play them, the more that you have an understanding of like when you read certain rules, what you know is going to like work out well and what you're a little bit more hesitant about. And of course, like it's never going to quite match being at the table, but also, as like Lynn was saying, everybody's table experience is subjective. So, you know, if I were to play this game with my normal game group, I might have a really good time, or they might like, we're very narrative focused. So we might love these particular narrative rules and not really love certain like combat rules. And then there might be another group who's like, these combat rules are awesome, right? Because that's what their group enjoys. And so I think that even in playing a game, it's always going to be subjective. So I do think that there are, I think that critique without gameplay is valuable. But I don't really offer critique or play these games. So it is, but that's kind of that's my thoughts on them. But I typically kind of the other thing is like the volume of games, is that like in order to really offer gameplay with critique, you just have to have the time, and those reviews are going to take a lot longer. And so it really depends on your priorities and what your goals are in doing these critiques, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Thomas, I can see you have thoughts. Also,
I wish I could read a game. Like honestly, like you know, I wish I could sit down, read a book, and then write about it. But I can't even I can't do that. So I play games. I read games so that I can play them, because otherwise I would not bother reading these books. They don't give me any pleasure to sit down and like read by themselves. Like I can't even, I don't have the strength to do it. You know, so I have no choice but to play them. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, Lynn, you look kind of scandalized down there.
I am scandalized. I love reading games. Like I love it. Like give it to me for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah. So I think that my point of view is pretty firmly in the middle here, where I think that reading a game book and then critiquing based on that reading is really important, because games are so subjective, and because I want to see what the author said, right? I want to see what the author said. I don't want to know what like my friends at the table are going to say. I want to know like what the author said, what the author is thinking about, how the author is like framing the narrative scaffolding that people will be building inside. And that's what I think is really fascinating about games, because I really care about like the authorship of games, and like the way that designers understand their role in the game that is going to be played at tables outside of their game, right? So while I totally think that I totally agree that like playing a game is obviously very helpful where you can see where things like break or crack. It's hard to know if things are breaking because the rules are bad or because the table is misunderstanding them or because the narrative that you're trying to push is not necessarily the narrative that the game is built for. So yeah, I really love reading a game and then writing about it. And that's probably my favorite way to do it. I just like it a lot. But yeah, there's a lot of value to be had in playing a game at the table as well.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I love to read a book, Thomas.
I love to read books as well.
Yeah, I mean, why not both? So fair. I do just want to circle back to a point that we raised in a previous discussion about like finding information about games that we are interested in talking about. And I was curious what each of you thought about like what is vital information that you need to have in order to do a deeper dive into a game. Like, what are you looking for? This could be in terms of like press kit, but this could also be in terms of like, you know, what are you looking for when you stumble across like an itch page or something? Thomas, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I don't have a great answer to this, but like innovation is interesting to me, and that's probably the thing that's going to get my attention, you know, when I feel like a game is doing something unique and different. Yeah, simple as that.
Yeah. Sam, what do you think?
You said itch page and my brain sparked. I have a lot of thoughts about itch pages. I think from an itch.io page perspective, I think it's really important to like I think it's important to have preview pictures of pieces of the game. They don't have to be like, you don't have to have art, but even just like a text example of just like a piece of it is really, really helpful. And then like I love to know like how many players it's for, and what are the materials you need. Those are, and also who created it is a great thing to have on the itch page. A lot of itch.io pages don't have the entire project team listed on the page, and I love to know that. And that's something that actually, kind of moving towards press kits, also important information. One, I think maybe for me, the most important information to have in a press kit, because I can find I mean, ideally, the press kit has everything that you need to know. But especially in an age where like AI art and writing is becoming more and more prominent, I have a strict like no AI rule for the stuff that I do videos about. And so if I receive a press kit or I'm on an itch.io page, or if somebody's like, hey, can you check out this Kickstarter? And I look at it and like there's no project team listed, or I'm seeing like this art on the page and there's nothing saying like where that art was from, I immediately become suspicious. And there are press kits that I get that like the entire game has been created by one person, and that person has, you know, done the writing, the art, the layout, or they got like public domain art. But because they're like one person, it doesn't always occur to like actually list out what they have done in the game. So that is also super, super important. Like if you have put together a whole game by yourself, just like one line saying like writing, art, and layout by you. That's great, because I can see that and I can be like, great, I know where all of this came from. And that is, I think, the most important piece of information for me. And it's helpful so I don't have to go digging and figuring out who's on the project team.
Yeah, definitely. Lynn, what makes a good press release? I'm asking on behalf of all of the game designers that are just like, yeah, but tell me how to do this if you can.
What makes a good press release? I mean, definitely listing the metadata, which is again, who's on the team, how many people play it, what system you use, how long a game is going to take. Like the metadata is important. Like you got to put it somewhere. But also, you know, what makes it unique? What sort of stories do you want people to tell? How is the thrust of the game loop going to happen? All that's important. And you know, telling a story and using your marketing as a way to not only inform people but also entertain people. and give people like hooks. Like you want to give them the narrative hooks that they can like bite into, just like a game. But yeah, luckily Rascal has a whole section dedicated to press releases, and you can sort of browse and see that it's like pretty straightforward stuff, which is great. But yeah, I would say if you're curious about what a press release should look like, which is not a press kit, different from a press kit. If you're curious about what a press release looks like, you can go to the announcement section on rascal.news and browse to your heart's content.
Very clever. Yeah, I am seeing some questions in chat, and honestly, this one is nice. So given unlimited resources, what would you change about the current landscape of the way RPGs are covered and critiqued? Oh, where do we start?
Great question.
I would hire 3 more journalists. I would pay myself a living wage, and I would hire 3 more journalists.
I love that Lynn was asked, what would you do with the unlimited resources? And they were like, a living wage.
I would like to pay rent. Like right now, Rascal right now makes enough money to support 1 journalist.
Yeah.
There are 3 of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to be able to do this as a like sustainable job.
Yeah.
Yeah, super valid.
Yeah, I would like to see, and this is when I say I would like to see, what I'm saying is I will be doing these things eventually once I have, like Lynn, like once I can pay rent, like these things will emerge. But basically, I would like to see more writing that considers games alongside other art forms, like like reading. A thing I'm working on is reading Apocalypse Keys alongside Frankenstein, right? And not necessarily like Frankenstein the original, but like sort of like post-colonial like retellings of Frankenstein, right? Like what, and I think these things can inform each other, writing that takes games and uses the experience that comes out of those games to discuss like historical, political, like social, like issues and themes. Like all of this stuff would be great and would be stuff that I would like to do and will do eventually.
That's great. Apocalypse Keys and Frankenstein is really cool.
Yeah.
I think that a big one is just time. If we're talking unlimited resources, I'd love more time. I'd love to be able to play all the games that I talk about. That'd be great. But so that's a big one. And just the time to be able to like sit down and read. Like a lot of the videos I do are on shorter games, and that's intentional because longer games take a lot more time to read and to go through. And so I can make more videos on shorter ones if I'm talking about shorter ones. But also because one of the other things is just improving access to games in general. With unlimited resources, just being able to get physical copies of games more places, so that more people can do reviews more easily, is ideal. Because that's another big consideration for reviewers who are not from like the US and the UK and Canada. And it's harder to just like get access to physical copies of games. So that's also a big one.
Yeah. So money and time, definitely desirable resources is what I'm hearing.
I mean, when are they not, right?
Yeah, exactly. Capitalism. Okay, so yeah, we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to see if there was anything that anyone was kind of really itching to talk about that we haven't gotten to talk about yet. Even if it's really spicy.
I this year co-authored an academic paper that's still in review, in peer review or whatever, with an academic called Kellen from Singapore. And it's about 3 games from Southeast Asia, 3 games specifically from the Philippines that all have this idea that the apocalypse is repetitive, that you save the world, then you have to save it again, then you have to save it again, and then you have to save it again. And I think that the fact that we have 3 games from the same social context coming up with the same metaphor for what I think is, the same social and political issues that they're dealing with is great. And that's the kind of stuff that I would love to do more of. And that's, when that paper comes out, I will share it with people.
Please.
Please do. I want to read that
paper.
I should mention these games. It's Apocalypse Keys, Arc by Momentos, and Navathem's End. And it's a little cool thing that, pattern to see.
Please. Yeah.
I'm gonna send you an email.
I saw Lynn writing them down. Making notes.
I'm gonna send you an email. I think that something that's interesting is that for me as a journalist, there's just not a lot of people out there doing investigative journalism or reported journalism. There's not a lot of people looking at trends and then doing trend pieces. There's not a lot of people, going writing think pieces on why Chris Cox is the saddest show pony on earth. You guys all laugh, but it was a great
I read the article. It was good.
I read that.
That's why I'm laughing.
Chase Carter, ladies and gentlemen. a master at work. But yeah, I think that there's just not a lot of people out there who are willing to push back against the status quo, because everyone is really fighting for scraps in this space. And I think that it's really important that journalists like me and unlike me have the ability to be really critical of the institutions that are providing the foundation of tabletop role-playing games. And I think that is really deeply important and really needs to be I need to foster it. I need to make sure that my reporters and my co-bosses feel like they can do that. And I really hope that we can be more, not necessarily critical, but more, critical, right? We have to be able to look at things and be able to break it down. And I think we need to, as an industry, develop that. And I hope that Rascal and the work that we do can help show people, here's exactly how we do it. Here's how we look at things. Here's how we analyze it. Here's how we pull all of these different bits and pieces together to create a newsworthy story that is critical of the industry while also very much hoping that it improves. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing that we didn't mention, is just the idea of journalism as a way to hold people accountable in a way that pushes the whole industry forward.
Sam, did we leave you with any lingering thoughts?
Honestly, no. Those are both great. No, nothing in particular.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. I'm going to ask everybody to remind us again of who you are and where you and your work can be found. And this is also your chance to plug any kind of ongoing projects that you have that you want people to see. We have space to do that. Yeah. Okay, Sam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sam Lee. My games can be found at blinkingbirchgames.itch.io. And I can be found pretty much everywhere at Goblin Mixtape, primarily Twitter and TikTok, but also Blue Sky, YouTube, Tumblr. And in terms of upcoming work, my biggest thing right now is that I'm going to be crowdfunding on BackerKit a new solo tarot TTRPG called Death of the Author, which is about a character who is fighting for agency in their story. And that launches in May.
Does it?
Yep.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, you'll be hearing from me for sure.
I'm just I'm a little.
Yeah. Okay, Lynn, what about you?
Busy taking notes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So hi. I am Rascal.news. Please go to Rascal.news. Please support us any way you can. That's the website URL. Even signing up for a free account is super helpful, helps us grow our audience, helps us grow our email list. If you see something you like on Rascal, please share it. That's kind of our entire marketing strategy right now, which we probably need to change. But yeah, please follow and read and share Rascal News. We are online at Rascal_News or Rascal News pretty much everywhere. Me personally, I am way too online, mostly on Twitter at Lynn Kadega, no spaces. But yeah, Rascals is kind of wild idea, and we hope it lasts a while.
It's so good. Please go to Rascal. It's so good.
Thomas, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find the newsletter at ttrpg.in, and I think you should sign up. When I hit 6,000 subscribers, I will feel good about myself, and that's great. Like, I love that for me.
Yeah, I love.
I'm a
too.
subscriber.
I'm a
Same.
subscriber too. I like
Cheers.
because of the time difference. I wake up every morning on Sunday, and I'm like, oh, delightful! I will open
Oh.
this email and see the. Yeah, no, it's great.
I think that was the first indie RPG related newsletter I ever subscribed to, actually.
Same.
So it's been amazing seeing, like, I mean, just your dedication to it and how you write about different things every week. I'm like, wow, this is great. Yeah, highly recommend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, a huge fan of everyone on this panel. I'm Sebastian Yue. I can be found on Twitter at Sebastian Yue, all one word also. My website is sebastianyue.ca. It has everything that I do. But this has been an absolutely delightful panel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you. And thank you to our wonderful speakers.
Thanks for putting it together.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Anytime. We're finishing on time.
Wow.
Amazing.
Professionals.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks very much.
Woo!
All right.
Are we still like live?
No. We're live?
Oh,
Oh,
no.
come on, Monty.
Okay.
They can hear us?